To face a Balrog in battle was a terrifying experience, for these ancient creatures were immensely powerful, and very few warriors could stand before them and survive. Their presence was enough to shake even the bravest of men, and they left a trail of destruction in their wake. If Sauron could somehow use these creatures, he would be able to achieve great things, which leads to the question, why didn't Sauron bring the Balrog into his service, and was he even able to control it? Hey guys, it's Carl here, and in today's episode, we'll be discussing Sauron's control over the Balrog. So before we can answer these questions, there is another piece to the puzzle that we need to address. Did Sauron even know that the Balrog was hiding in Moria? After all, most of the Balrogs had been slain in the War of Wrath, in a cataclysmic battle that ended the reign of their master Morgoth, and those that survived had no choice but to flee and hide in deep places beneath the earth, for otherwise they would have been hunted down by the forces of the Valar. It's possible that not even Sauron knew where the Balrogs were hiding, or if any had survived, and so he would have never had the chance to recruit them. Now, even though this might seem like a valid argument, I feel that there's a lot to discredit it, and that it's quite likely that Sauron eventually discovered where the Balrog was hiding. We know that Sauron had sent many of his orcs into Moria as a garrison, and I'm sure that some of these orcs must have come across the Balrog. We even see them fighting besides it, even though they were terrified of its presence. And some of these orcs must have been sent out as messengers to Mordor to inform Sauron of any changes in the north. I'm sure that they would have mentioned the Balrog's presence in Moria and their current situation, and so I'm quite confident that Sauron was aware of the Balrog's survival. So if Sauron knew of its existence, then why didn't he use it? Perhaps the Balrog was too loyal to its master Morgoth, and it might have refused to serve any other being. Or maybe it felt too proud to follow Sauron, since both of them were Maiar spirits. Now we definitely can't rule this out, though I feel that this theory doesn't give enough credit to the Balrog's intelligence. A Maiar spirit was no laughing matter, and they were smart and perceptive beings. By aligning itself with Sauron, the Balrog would have increased its power and importance, and also improve its chance of survival, and I believe that the Balrog was wise enough to realize this. Sauron had always been Morgoth's second in command and his greatest servant, and even after Morgoth's defeat, Sauron still acted in his name and encouraged his worship. And so, I don't think that the Balrog would have any conflicting loyalties, for by serving Sauron, it could still fulfill Morgoth's purpose while also improving its own status, and it seems like it was in the Balrog's best interest to serve Sauron, or to at least work besides him. And so, if we assume that Sauron could have controlled the Balrog, then why didn't he use it in any of his wars? It almost seems like a waste, for a Balrog would have been a great asset to his army, and it would devastate his enemies' lands while terrorizing their people. Now Sauron was anything but foolish, and I'm sure that he didn't underestimate the Balrog's power, and so I believe that it must have been in his best interest to keep the Balrog in Moria. Through the Balrog, Sauron was able to stop the dwarves from reclaiming their ancient home of Khazad-dûm, for its threat was too great for them to handle, and they would remain a wandering people, which stifled their growth and prosperity. Moria would remain in the hands of the orcs, which gave Sauron another bastion of evil in the northern lands, and it allowed him to secure another passage across the Misty Mountains. For hundreds of years, it was almost impossible for anyone to cross these mountains, for Moria was a death sentence to travel through, while the northern passage across these mountains, called the High Pass, was watched and occupied by orcs. If you were very desperate, you could try to travel across these mountains by carving out your own path through its snow, though this was incredibly dangerous and almost impossible to achieve, and not even the Fellowship would manage to complete this journey, for they were forced to turn back and risk the passage through Moria instead. And so, any passage across these mountains was effectively blocked, and if you wanted to make your way across them, you would have to go all the way around these mountains and travel through the lands of Rohan. It's worth mentioning that, after the events of The Hobbit, the Beornings managed to reclaim the passage of the High Pass and they opened it once more, for it was no longer in the orcs' control. Now again, if we assume that Sauron could control the Balrog, then we can also say that he had quite an interesting choice ahead of him. Was it worth summoning the Balrog to Mordor and sacrificing his grip on the northern lands? if it meant that he could use it in his wars against Gondor. In my opinion, this wouldn't have helped him much, because his war in the south was already a guaranteed victory, a war of attrition, and as long as he kept sending wave after wave of orcs against Minas Tirith, it would eventually fall to his forces. The only way for Sauron to be defeated was through some extraordinary unforeseen circumstance, such as the destruction of the One Ring, and in that regard, I don't think the Balrog would have made much of a difference. I also feel that the Balrog wouldn't have sped up Sauron's victory, for it doesn't strike me as a creature of mass destruction that could annihilate entire armies. I've no doubt that it was a terrible foe to face in battle, and its dread must have been legendary, though I believe that its true strength lay in single combat against a powerful being such as Gandalf or elves like Elrond and Galadriel. Now it's interesting to note that when Sauron was still disguised as the Necromancer of Dol Guldur, his original plans were to attack the lands of Lothlorien and Rivendell, and to reoccupy the realm of Angmar before he returned to Mordor. Gandalf was actually worried that Sauron would use the dragon Smaug in these battles, and that they would devastate these northern lands, which is why he was so keen on helping Thorin defeat Smaug. I imagine that Sauron might have also used the Balrog in his northern campaign, and perhaps, if the Balrog had survived this battle against Gandalf, it might have also played a part in his attacks upon Mirkwood and Lothlorien during the War of the Ring. This would have been quite effective, for Balrogs were said to be the deadliest enemy of the elves, apart from Morgoth himself, and so it might have caused quite a lot of harm to these lands. I feel that all of these arguments really come together well, and from a strategic point of view, it does seem like keeping the Balrog in Moria was the best course of action, assuming that Sauron could control it, of course. In a way, the Balrog was kind of like Shelob, a convenient entity that served Sauron's purpose and helped to secure his influence. Anyway friends, this wraps up today's video and I hope you enjoyed it. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts about this topic, especially because there's so much interesting speculation around it. Do you guys think that Sauron could control the Balrog? And if you were Sauron, would you have used it for your wars in the north? Or do you think that it was better for your attacks against Minas Tirith? As always, I'd like to thank my patrons who have really helped to elevate this channel. It wouldn't be the same without you. And I would like to express how grateful I am for your support, especially our Wizard-Tier Patrons, T-Gorman, Mike Feeney, Roland Myrvold, and Jacob Williams. If you too would like to help support this channel while unlocking some cool perks, I'll be leaving a link to my Patreon page in the video description below. I'll also be leaving links to our Instagram, Facebook, Discord and Twitter communities, so follow us if you'd like to have some extra Lord of the Rings content in your day-to-day lives. As always, if you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe to join our fellowship today. I hope to see you all in my next video, where together we'll once again explore the magical world and lore of Middle-earth.